literally happened a month ago. Into the world, and I was just thinking, I didn't really answer. Do I seem into this offer because there's no other opportunity, or do I wait and hope that something else is coming around the corner? And I listened throughout this call, and I knew that one big question that I would have that I think would help me kind of understand whether or not this person really respected my work was, we are talking today about something that I haven't really seen anyone talk about: signs for bad book deals. The path to being traditionally published is so intense, it's so strenuous, and whether or not it's the stress of writing your book and drafting it and getting it to a polished point, querying and being in the query trenches, and also getting to the point where someone is even giving you an offer. There is a lot of scarcity in the literary industry, and there is a lot of ways that people that want to get published can get really excited and might say yes to deals that aren't worth their time or their effort or their talent. How this can come to be, because it's happened to me a few times, and I just published my first book last year. I actually got a really bad book offer a month ago, and I'm still kind of processing it. So this video is also a good way for me to talk about the different things that I've noticed, especially as a Black writer. Gonna dive into a few headlines that have come out over the past number of months. Article that came out with Bustle in 2021, and it is a piece about Roxane Gay, and it's titled "Roxane Gay, Publishing Knows What They Paid Me and They Should Be Ashamed." And but this article reads, last summer Roxane Gay stunned Twitter when she revealed that her best-selling book, Bad Feminist, received an advance of just $15,000. Roxane Gay is one of the most well-known feminist writers today, and the idea that her acclaimed, amazing book that won so many awards was only paid $15,000 for an advance. And to give you an idea, a smaller advance is kind of considered $20,000 or $15,000 or less. The advance that I got for my first book was $5,000. And a lot of indie presses don't have as much money, so on a certain level, it's understandable in the literary industry when indie presses offer you less money, but it is also telling that for a lot of POC authors or marginalized authors, indie presses are the kind of publishing houses that tend to take risks on, I guess, more hybrid or interesting work. And so it just shows that even someone like Roxane Gay can be underpaid, but also be critically acclaimed. There's another article that's also out, and this is about the author Disha Paiwa. This news came out within the last month. Disha Paiwa has a 7-figure deal for her next 2 books. And I raise this because there is a lot of discrepancy in the literary industry around what people are paid, and if you have more notoriety or credibility, that can lead to much higher numbers. A few authors might tend to be picked by the gatekeepers or the elite in the publishing industry, and then we get examples like this where, yes, this author is amazing and has written a book that is critically acclaimed in the past, but there is the question of, if certain authors are being paid 7-figure advances, where is the equitable kind of distribution of money to authors that might not have as much credibility or don't have the same publishing track record? And although people deserve money, it is important to kind of understand that when a lot of money is put in certain places, the money that was spent there in excess isn't able to actually trickle down to other authors and people that want to be published as well. And I found a piece online titled "Odds of Getting Published, Statistics with Words Rated," and it says, within the publishing industry, it is agreed that the odds of an author getting their work published stands between 1% and 2%. Despite this low number, more than 95% of manuscripts received by publishers and agents are below the standard required. And these statistics are really important because they show the discrepancies. They show the exorbitant amounts of money that are put in certain areas of the publishing industry. There are so many red flags that can come up when you are dealing with seeking being traditionally published, but I want to talk through 2 different examples that I went through because these are tangible, clear examples that while I was experiencing them, I definitely noticed some of the red flags, and in retrospect, I now notice more of the red flags. My debut book is titled "When They Tell You to Be Good." It's a memoir that charts my political coming of age, and it came out in October of 2022. But let's rewind back to 2021. I will be doing my first phone call for my first ever potential book deal. Just entering this conversation, trying to hold on to my own sense of power and ask the questions that need to be asked of a deal that I'm skeptical of and that I feel already just isn't honoring my work.
I just have to laugh through what I just experienced. Woo! So the phone call happened. Let me be a little bitchy right now and just in shock. I'm just in shock. I'm like, how do you try to buy a book without giving the writer a clear idea of whether or not you actually fucking finished it?
If you want to follow my debut journey from submissions to getting a literary agent to being published and book tour and everything, I have a whole debut diaries playlist that you can check out on my channel. I was doing a residency in Key West, Florida, and I had an agent at the time. We had been revising my memoir over the last 8 or 9 months, and I was really excited to start submissions, and I was really nervous, and I started reaching out to other people that I knew that had been published to get advice. And I went on submissions in January of 2021, and submissions was really hard. I got a lot of rejections. I think in retrospect, I didn't really know how I think I should have planned for how I wanted to deal with and receive the rejections that happened throughout the submissions process. But essentially from January 2021 to around July 2021, I went on submissions in 2 rounds. And for those that don't know, submissions is the process that once you are signed with a literary agent and you've edited your manuscript with them, or you and your agent decide that your manuscript is polished enough, book submissions is when your agent goes on the process of trying to sell your book to different editors at publishing houses. So I went on roughly 2 rounds of submissions. I got a lot of vague rejections. I got some rejections that pointed towards specific things in the book that they felt like didn't really resonate with them. But overall, a lot of the rejections I got were very vague and didn't really give me any kind of actionable feedback to go on. Around May of 2021, my literary agent told me, come midsummer, I want to switch careers. I want to get out of agenting. And so on a certain level, while I was on submissions, I was also anticipating the idea that I would eventually have to get a new agent halfway through my submissions process unless my book sold. So fast forward to around June, my agent called me and was like, we have an editor who is interested. I'm gonna get more information from them and they wanna talk to you on the phone at some point over the next month. I, that summer, did 2 residencies, and I remember during my second residency, that was in early July, my agent had already sent my manuscript to the publisher and they had read it all, or the editor, and they had read it all. And in early June, we did a phone call. Here's where the red flags start. We did a Zoom call, and immediately this editor misgendered my agent. And mind you, my book is about my life as a queer Jamaican American navigating anti-blackness, homophobia, so many different forms of systemic and interpersonal oppression. My agent is non-binary / trans. And so to have an editor misgender my agent when my book is largely about sexual identity and gender identity, that was already for me like a huge no-go. And this was also a white editor. So on top of that, you're white and you're misgendering my agent. So that was one level. And we get into the conversation and this editor is very much saying things like, oh, I love your book and I love what it represents and I am really interested in representing this. And although this person was praising my book, I did feel like a lot of the praise that they were giving it was very vague. They weren't really speaking to any specifics or any particular part of the book that really resonated with them. So I was kind of picking up on this throughout the conversation. At this point, I already kind of knew what this publisher, at this point, I don't think I knew exactly what the deal was. And so over the call, we talked about the details of the offer. And essentially, this publisher wanted to buy my book. I think it was $2,500 was the advance. They wanted world English rights. Just even those 2 facts, it's a low advance. Typically, if you are being offered a lower advance, it's highly recommended that you negotiate that the publisher doesn't get as many of the rights that a larger advance would encompass. So if you're selling your book for a really low advance, you might only want to give the publisher North American English rights or US English rights. And this is a way for you to protect yourself in terms of, one, navigating whether or not this publisher is going to advocate for your book in a way that is going to help it sell and earn out beyond that advance. 2, you have more financial opportunities in the future to sell other rights for your book, profit more off of it, etc. I knew these numbers going into the call, so the call was kind of, at this point, I was honestly very resigned to the fact that maybe my dream wouldn't happen, maybe my book wouldn't sell. I'm very much a person where I am an optimist until I need to look at the worst case scenario and kind of acknowledge that it might happen. So at this point, I was kind of like, do I seam into this offer because there's no other opportunity, or do I wait and hope that something else is coming around the corner? And I listened throughout this call, and I knew that one big question that I would have that I think would help me kind of understand whether or not this person really respected my work was, I know that the end of my book is very hybrid. It involves some elements that might confuse some readers. And I was really interested in what they thought about the ending of my book, because it's essentially autofiction. Partway through our call, I was like, oh, I just want to understand what specifics about the book you really resonated with. What did you think about the last part of it? Because I know it's really kind of non-traditional. And verbatim, their answer was, oh, I love it. I mean, I think it was very interesting, and I could really see what you were doing, and your story is just so important, and it's so important to be out in the world, and I want this press to be a part of putting your book out into the world. And I was just thinking, you didn't really answer my question. Like, there are very specific things that are in the last part of this book, and you're not even acknowledging them on like an editorial level. So that led me to my second question that I would recommend a lot of people ask is, one of the distinctions that you should figure out is whether or not you want a really editorial editor. But I was looking for someone who could at least acknowledge things about the book that they thought could be improved, because I knew that there were certain things that I would maybe consider needed to be improved in the book. I said, I'm just wondering what your suggestions or thoughts are on how this book could be improved. And this white man literally said, you know, I wouldn't really change anything at all. Like, I really trust your voice, and I want your voice to be at the forefront, and I don't really have any editorial notes. In my mind, I'm thinking, you've had my book for a number of weeks. You've had time to read it, take notes, think about this. You want to buy it for a small sum of money. You're kind of blowing smoke up my ass right now. Make me feel like you appreciate my work when you're using vague compliments. And when I ask you about what edits you might have, you don't have any. And this to me immediately are the signs of someone who is trying to profit off of a project that represents a certain kind of identity and can add to the diversity of their press. Because I know myself, I would rather be respected and given valid critique than praised and not be given any kind of feedback or critique at all. And so what I felt from this call is like, oh, this guy wants me to think like I'm a genius, so I'm more susceptible to say yes to this book offer. I'm not the dude to do that to. And so I ended this call, and I remember immediately after, me and my agent just kind of talked, and we were kind of like, even though I apologized to my agent, I was like, I'm so sorry, this person misgendered you, blah, blah, blah. My agent was like, it is what it is. And my agent said, I just want you to think about whether or not you want this offer. There's no judgment, yes or no, but it is your decision whether or not you're comfortable with this. So I want you to think on it. The larger context is, at the time, I was at a residency in Florida called Atlantic Center for the Arts. I have been planning to do a video about this residency and why it went wrong, but a lot of things went wrong with this residency, and I ended up walking out because of the sort of racist kind of approach that the administration at this residency had to a particular resident there. And so I was there, like, protesting this residency. I ended up leaving very abruptly. It was very upsetting, kind of triggering, kind of traumatizing. Me and three other artists ended up staying in a hotel. And it was when I was at that hotel and I was thinking, if I don't even want to enter artist residency spaces that can't respect people of color, why would I work with an editor that, to me, very vividly doesn't actually respect my work and what I represent? And on the deepest level, I can say in my bones, I felt like that editor hadn't actually read my full manuscript. I felt like he skimmed it. I felt like he saw that it hit a number of like identity tags and it was about these different topics. And I think he believed that it would be a good addition to his press's roster. And this goes into other things. I remember asking questions about promotion and what his thoughts are about where the book would end up. And all of his answers were very vague in a way that I now understand as someone who isn't as deeply embedded in the publishing industry as they'd like you to believe, and someone who wants to capitalize on a newer author who is hungry to be in the industry. I'll maybe do another video about the green flags that you can experience when looking into a book deal or deciding whether or not you're going to work with an editor. So actually comment below if you want to see that or like this video. I was just sitting in my hotel room, upset about this residency, upset that this white man would offer me this. And I remember my agent was going to be like, we were going to part ways in like 2 weeks. And I remember thinking, I can't do this. Like, I can't do this. My ancestors have led me to fled this residency, and my ancestors are also telling me, don't take this book deal. And so I told my agent that it was a solid no. They went back to that person and said no. And I am so glad I said no to this book offer because I noticed all the red flags. I kind of listened to my intuition, but there was a very real part of me that thought, if I say yes to this, it can open so many doors. I mean, being published is such a good thing to have on your record, and it can help me get more jobs, and it can help me find other opportunities. But beyond all of the possibilities that having my dream happen would offer, I also knew that I wanted to feel a real sense of ownership over why and how this book was coming into the world. I wanted to feel respected in the process. I wanted to feel seen, because I wrote a book all about the ways that I did or did not feel seen in my life. So why would I allow the business end of this process to take away the personal power and labor and value that I put into this thing? And even if I don't get another offer, I still need to bet on myself, and I still need to say what I believe this book is worth. And some of that is financial, and some of that is also extremely emotional and socio-political. So I said no, and luckily around that time, I had another editor reach out to me individually, and that's who I ended up going with publisher-wise. But that's a whole story for a whole nother video. The next bad book offer that I got literally happened a month ago. And in some ways, I have to laugh at this stuff because I don't know if other, like, especially marginalized people experience this, but when people come at you sideways or like goofy, it's kind of like, who do you think you are? This happened about a month ago. For those that don't know, I run a newsletter called Millennial Writer Life. I share different writing reflections and resources. If you would like to, please go and check it out. But about a month ago, I got a response email to my newsletter, and it was an editor basically saying, I work at this press. I understand that you're working on a few book projects right now. I would love to talk to you about them. And I was thinking, okay, like, people are coming to me. I hopped on a call with this person about a week later, and it was a Black editor at a press that I hadn't really heard of, but I checked out their website and they seemed pretty reputable. And this person on the call was kind of saying like, oh, this is how I found your work, and someone else mentioned your name to me, and I really love your work and what you represent, et cetera, et cetera. I want to know what book projects you're working on. And mind you, in this conversation, there was one piece of the conversation that kind of gave me pause. It was the fact that during the conversation that this editor mentioned, oh, I also represent authors as well, but I'm not trying to poach you or anything. I was thinking, someone entering a business conversation and kind of alluding to wanting to do something less than, let's just call it PC in the literary agent industry. I talked to this person, I explained my book ideas. They seemed really, really interested, especially in the nonfiction book idea that I had. And they said, okay, well, for your novel, I want you to send me, I believe they wanted me to send them a proposal for both my novel and the nonfiction book idea that I had. Is the fact that they asked for a proposal for my novel. And granted, different people work differently, but when I went to my literary agent and talked to them about this, they said, oh, it's really strange because most people in the industry don't ask for proposals for novels. They just usually ask you for the novel. And so I was just kind of like, okay, well, I just want to see what's going to happen because you never know what people are going to offer. I mean, you can't say no to an opportunity unless you know what's going to happen. And so I prepared those materials and I sent them to my agent, and my agent sent them to this editor. About a week later, I got 2 emails from this editor in the same day. The first email said, oh, just want to let you know, like our publication, as far as I've learned right now, doesn't work with authors that have literary agents. And I was thinking, you reached out to me. You knew that I had an agent because you mentioned it on the call. I mentioned my agent on the call. I CC'd my agent in the last email I sent to you. So that's red flag number 1. Reaching out to someone and not acknowledging the full scope of information of the guidelines of your publication, or reaching out to someone and not knowing the guidelines of your own publication. Got an email an hour and a half later. Hey, we would love to offer you a contract for my nonfiction book. And I was thinking, so they want to work with me on this book? Do they want to work with me and my agent, or just me? And in both of those emails, they had specifically chosen not to CC my agent. And so I'm thinking, that email with the book offer, I was just kind of like, this seems kind of odd. And they are asking to immediately hop on a phone call. And then I think that's another red flag in a way. It's gatekeepers that come to you and kind of assume that they have the credibility to be taking up your time. Because for me, being given information in an email versus having to take the time out of my day to do a phone call, those are two very different commitments. And if you are trying to respect someone's time on a business level, why immediately hop into a phone call? And so I emailed back and I said, oh, thank you for this offer. Before I hop on a phone call, I just want to understand some of the basics of what you're offering so I know what I'm getting into. Can you let me know what the advance is and what kind of rights you're looking to acquire? They emailed back and said, we wouldn't pay you $2,000. $2,000. $2,000. We want world language rights. You want to sell my book all around the world for $2,000. So lowballing me, once again, lowballing me and not involving my agent. Two huge red flags. This was a Black editor. So they're like, oh, I like Black writer, Black editor, like this would be so great. And I'm thinking, just because you're Black doesn't mean you're gonna pay me. And I'm also thinking, my first editor for my first book was Black. I've already worked with a Black agent or a Black editor. Oh my gosh. And I just couldn't do it. So I told my agent, no. And mind you, this is all with the understanding within myself that when I sold my first book, I took a lower advance, but it was because I really respected the press that it was with. I really respected my editor. I knew that they would edit the heck out of my book and really help it shine. Even though the monetary compensation that I was being offered wasn't this huge amount that would necessarily change my life, the publishing process changed my life. It set a standard for what kind of editor I wanted to work with, what kind of process I wanted them to bring to the table, even when they were talking about the contract. And the blasé kind of attitude of this editor who was letting certain things slip or kind of acknowledging that they didn't know things, it doesn't inspire confidence in an author who might be entering a year-long editing and publishing process with them. And so I just felt so many red flags. And I told my agent, I said, no, we'll go somewhere else. We'll see what else is possible. In the past year alone, I've done countless author events and I've taught different workshops and courses, and all of those have been forms of income that have come to me because of my book deal. But to start, those opportunities would be less worth it in a sense if I entered a contract with the publisher and an editor that didn't respect me and my work. And so I'm glad that I both had a publisher that respected me and my work, and also that that publishing process led to all these other things that started from a good foundational place. Some of the red flags you can look out for are people that don't respect your cultural or gender or sexual background or identity. Editors that give vague compliments and platitudes and feedback about your work. Editors that have literally no editorial suggestions whatsoever. Editors that want to lowball you and try to paint it as an amazing opportunity. Because I think on some level, when publishers are paying you beneath a certain amount, they should have a structural analysis of what it means to pay writers of certain backgrounds that amount, and they should, at least on some level in my mind, acknowledge that and try to offer things that remedy that lack of pay. Or that to me is the ideal version of a writing industry. People that reach out to you and give very vague offers and try to demand more of your time. Another red flag are editors that try to weaponize and yield identity politics in their favor in order to make you feel more comfortable or more safe in the opportunity that they're offering. And then also, I mean, literally the biggest red flag is an editor you're not even sure read your book. Because the first bad book offer I mentioned in this video, I'm not even sure if you read my book. Oh gosh. To end off this video, I think it is so important, especially for Black writers, for writers of color, to understand the complexity of the kind of exploitation that we're up against. I mean, look at the fact that there is a WGA strike right now and a SAG strike that just ended literally today, as far as the time that I'm recording this video. And we live in a media landscape where so many things are buckling. Publications are buckling. Writers are fighting to be paid more. And the few people that rise up to the top and represent an equitable or stable life, they aren't the litmus test for what most people experience. I look back and I'm so grateful that I had the kind of wits about me to understand the red flags that were coming up. I'm glad I had people around me that could acknowledge these red flags to me and validate what I was feeling. And it really is so important to know that in your journey to wanting to be published, you deserve to be approached in a professional way. You deserve to be given the adequate amount of information to know what kind of decisions you're making. You deserve to have agents or professionals in your corner that help you see the contradictions or the pitfalls of an offer you might be getting. And as a Black author, I really recommend to other Black writers, connect with each other, talk to other people that have been published through that publisher before, find writers online, reach out to people on social media, really do your research before saying yes to a scenario that really might not be that good for you in the end. But don't just jump on a yes. Take the time to process, do your research, reach out to your peers, and just try to make an educated decision, because that's all you can really do in the end, is gather as much information as you can and know what the red flags are. And for me, turning down that first book deal led me to publishing with Tin House. It led me to doing a book tour over this past year that led me to traveling somewhere new roughly every month. It led me to workshops, to having the flexibility that I do now in a financial way that I never had before, and knowing that it came from a place where I was respected and my work was cared for. So thank you for watching this video. If you want to support me more, find me on Patreon, where I upload early access to these videos. My Patreon is patreon.com/PrShakur, or find me on social media. I have my newsletter, Millennial Writer Life. I also post a lot about writing on TikTok. So find me on TikTok, PR Shakur on TikTok. And thank you so much for watching this video. Comment below with some of the red flags that I noted in this video that struck you or stuck out to you, or if you have red flags of your own that you've experienced in navigating the writing industry, because the more we share with each other, the better our deals and opportunities are going to be. See you next time.